So welcome back to the Behind the Boards, the podcast where we talk real life in estate agency, the wins, the chaos, the funny stories, and the stuff no one tells you about the job. And today I'm joined by Charlie Knapp, who's part of the Keller Williams network. So how are you doing, Charlie?
Yeah, all good. Good old start to the year. So thank you for having me.
No problem, no problem. So you've had a good January so far then?
Yeah, not bad. A bit of a slow start in January, but it's actually picking up
Yeah,
now, I'd say. So good couple of weeks coming
good
into
stuff.
February. So could be worse, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the same boat. You always want to try and look for more, don't you? So even though we have a good
100%.
January, it's always looking for more. So obviously, this podcast is about new agents joining, potentially agents that are already in the industry, and just learning a few more details about who's actually in the self-employed world. So tell me, how did you get in the industry in the first place?
So I worked for Savills for about
Okay,
10 years, just under 10 years. I actually worked on the lettings side in
right.
Savills, and
Yeah.
I knew Tanya at Savills when she worked there. She actually brought me into Savills. And I never, I didn't fall out with Savills or anything like that. I always say to people, I had an opportunity. This was an opportunity to do join KW, join a brokerage, go self-employed, which I took and didn't really look back. Well, I didn't look back much. The odd day, obviously, here and there.
Yeah,
But generally speaking, now, never look back. So that was sort of how, and I developed the sales side from there quite quickly.
yeah,
So I now do the majority of sales rather than lettings.
sure.
And yeah, grew it from there. So yeah, I was very much high street. To be honest, Savills is a not a bad company. Um, I made a few personally. I made a few career moves there that probably weren't best for me long term.
Yeah.
So I consider myself very lucky that I had this opportunity to make it my own.
Excellent. Excellent. So, how did you get into agency in the first place for Savills? Was it something you've always wanted to do?
um, if I'm honest, I knew I knew Tanya, who was then quite senior at Savills, and I came out of uni,
Right.
having done my degree, done my masters, and sort of went, right, who's gonna bestow me with a job? And then you realise in that short, sharp learning curve, no one's going to bestow you with a job because you don't know anything. Um, and I was talking to a lot of people, applied for a lot of different things, and she said to me, well, why don't you have a look at have a look at a property, an agency, and I started Savills. I had a couple of interviews at Savills in different departments. I didn't get in straight away, but I ended up in the Henley office, and I literally started as a part-time administrator there,
Yeah.
and just steadily wound my way up. Went into full time, then went to property management, then became a negotiator. Just sort of climbed the rungs, moved to Windsor, and didn't for a long time didn't look back. Had a good time there.
Yeah. Good. Good. And Savills is a pretty big name, right? Yeah. I mean, I know of them even in the Midlands, and there's some of the other bigger ones that we don't even hear of. So, how was the training there? Was it good? Did you learn a lot there?
Um, it's very. I mean, it's basically it's scarcely comparable to what I do now. There was training, and there actually was some good training. They had I can't remember what it's called now, but they had a certain specific thing that they did for a while, probably later when I was. That was quite good. There's not bluntly, there's not a huge amount of training that goes on. If I'm
Yeah.
brutally honest, there's the odd bit. That was a quite a specific period of, and when I say there was training, it was probably 3 sessions across
Right.
a year. So it's not the same as what we have at KW or KW Oxygen. Don't get me wrong, there were some people at Savills who taught me a lot. And there were some really good agents there. There were some head of departments that, and I went in very fresh faced,
Yeah.
and I learned a lot there. And I learned from good people and I learned from bad people because that's what you get in a big company, right? In any big company.
That's it.
But it's not. It's scarcely comparable. And things like it is a big company. And what I don't want to do, I'm not sitting here and cussing Savills. I have
No,
nothing against
absolutely
them.
not.
They
Yeah.
sell a lot of houses, right? There's
Yeah.
nothing for us to be anti them about. It's just what my knowledge. But I think with a lot of the big agencies, they have this access to these massive amounts of research. And this is something I look back on. They have all this outgoing research. So you get sent to your inbox when you work there. No one reads it,
Sure. Yeah.
because it's like delete, deal with my inquiries, or I just want to go home. And that's sort of mad to me now, because you're trying to get research all the time because you want to be the local expert, don't you? You're the national, you're basically the expert. You're right. You're being trusted. So it's just a very different vibe, I think, being
Yeah.
being an employed person.
A lot of people have said that, to be fair. I've already spoke to on the podcast where they've said, they've learned on the job rather than do the training. And it's
100%.
interesting because I think when you're with these bigger companies, you get the leads more or less given to you. So I can understand the delete button being used a lot. 'Cause you're like, well, do I really need to know? I'm getting the leads
Yeah,
anyway. I'm going out. But as a person, you don't, you can't grow with your own information and knowledge when you go into self-employed, I suppose. So there is a big difference now going into
big difference.
self-employed and being from the corporate. So no, that's interesting. That's interesting. So do you have any frustrations with the industry at the minute then?
Yes.
Solicitors,
Name me an
maybe?
industry where people don't have frustrations. That's come on. Yeah, of course. Look, it's not. I always think about I think about agency a lot from I try and look at it from outside because again, and even more so I think when you're doing what we do, where you are trying to be all things to all people and trying to sort of govern everything in your industry, you get very wrapped up in it. Now, my family they all work in the veterinary profession, right?
Got it.
And they have no concept of what I do or what it's like being an agent. They just, it's just quite an interesting perspective. So the frustrations, with the industry are it's very hard to make it really consistent.
Yeah.
Especially doing what we do, which is not, none of us profess to be the world's biggest agents. We're not a Savills or Chancellors or, it's not necessarily a volume based. There are obviously growing agencies within the sector. But that means, to make it consistent and try and plan is really hard because you have 1 month where it says, you've sold 2 houses, 3 houses, 4 houses, or a big house, and you're like, wow, I'm absolutely flying this month. And then the next month, you're like, oh my, according to my QuickBooks, my profits are down 400%. It just is very up and down. So that's, from a business perspective, that makes it difficult. And the fact is, if we're really honest with ourselves, it's not a popular industry.
No.
Politicians are a bit worse, I think,
Yeah.
in the actual ratings, but it's not. Let's be honest, it's not. It's not an industry where people have a huge amount of faith in. And I again, it's something I dwell on because I hate that because I like to consider myself here to help people, here to do a good job.
Especially.
Here,
Yeah.
I've got my pride in what I do. I want to do a really good job, and help people out and answer and do everything I can for them. But it doesn't. People don't have faith in it, and I think partially that's because it is when you're selling or letting or buying or whatever. It is really stressful, and you rarely lash out your solicitor.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
They has it doesn't happen very often. It does, but not often. But it's easier to get annoyed with an agent. And in a lot of the industry, it is quite easy come, easy go.
Yeah. Yeah.
As what I was saying, when I was a negotiator, I sort of strolled into the job and started trying to do it.
Sure.
But if something falls through when you're working and you're on a not particularly big wage, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, it
No.
hurts. It doesn't hurt that much.
Yeah.
Personally, if a deal falls through for me, I consider it basically a catastrophe.
Sure. I think we all do sometimes, especially
Yeah.
the bigger ones. Absolutely. The reason I've asked that is because I think you see so much over socials, especially LinkedIn and whatnot, that this job can be quite easy. Because I think there's a lot of self-employed models that are obviously trying to get people into their
Yeah.
models, and I think you need to know a bit of the real world as well if it's something that you're considering.
100. I mean, it's interesting you say that because when I speak to Tanya a lot, who runs Oxygen, and she said, "Will I speak to these agents that are interested?" And I'm very open with Tanya. I say, "Look, can I be honest with them?"
Hmm.
And she's like, "Yeah, absolutely. We want honest people in. That's why I like being part of the ALC and stuff as well."
Yeah.
Because it's not easy,
No.
right? It's not easy. It's not a license to print money, and there's a lot of it that's not complicated.
Hmm.
Right? It's not. If we're honest with ourselves, it's not. It's not rocket science. It's not brain
No.
surgery.
Absolutely.
But it's not easy. It's
No.
dependent on a lot of other people. The actual payment structures of when you get paid, how you get paid, make it really difficult to get it off the ground. It's not easy.
No.
And that first year is hard.
Yeah, it's you need someone to lean onto, and I think sometimes people coming into these models think, okay, it's brilliant, I'm going to do everything on my own, but actually you do need that team support as well. So even though you are on your own, it's nice to have that team mentality.
Yeah, you do. I mean, the thing I like, right, about I say KW, I suppose I assume any of the brokerages, but is that you can do it your own way.
Yeah,
So there are people as part of our market center, you'll know, who really are really into that KW community, KW family thing, and they lean into that. They do things together, and that's great. Or you can be. There are other people who I know who are very good agents. I think I've never met some of them.
Yeah, sure.
But they're great. They do it their
Yeah.
own way. They're independent. They have access to all the stuff we have. And then there's people probably more like a bit like me who are somewhere probably in the middle.
Yeah.
Go like to meet up with people, like to make use of the systems, but also have my own brand to a certain extent, if you know what I mean.
Sure. Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. And it was interesting you were saying about your first 12 months and how painful it can be sometimes. What mistakes did you make in the first 12
Oh
months?
man,
Or what mistakes would you tell
so
people
many,
not to make?
so many. Look, the thing. So I look back with sort of, I wouldn't say fond memories now because that would be, it was a stressful time, but you wrote it out, and I sort of wrote it out certainly, and those people, most people do. When you go out on self-employed, most people I hope will go out with at least a vague plan in mind and some backing and some ideas, but you do step outside and look around and go, oh my God, how do I compete with Chancellors or Jones Robinson or your local agent? Even if it's a local agent, your Davis Tates or whatever, it's how do I compete? It's just little me on my own trying to do that, and it takes a while for you to go, right, actually I'm not trying to compete, I'm trying to do my own thing. But getting it off the ground, it is tough, right? If you've sold something on day one, there's a average of just a bit over 3 months now conveyancing before you get any money.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so financially it's hard to make it go, and that's why I did lettings as well, because I know I can churn lettings out more quickly. So that you've got to go in with a bit of a plan. In terms of mistakes I made, the single biggest mistake I made is not nailing an area.
Sure. Okay.
Without any doubt, and that is still something that I really struggle with, and I've almost gone down such a rabbit hole with it. If you look at the good agents, Falls, the Adams, the Lion Estates, the Michael Baileys, they are all nailed to an area, pretty much without exception. Even you, Chris, even
Yeah, just touching on that though. I see you do a lot of equestrian style properties, so forgive me because I don't really know that market too well. Can you get an area for those?
You can, of course, yeah, of course you can. I mean, I'm in a fairly rural area, so there's it's good. But that's more developed over the last couple of years. Now, I always had those contacts, and I'm very lucky to have that, because who I know, what I know, I'm from that background.
Yeah.
But that was really I didn't really want to exclusively do that, certainly at the beginning, because if you have something that's £2 million, that's terrific, it's great, it's amazing, but it's much harder to sell a £2 million property than it is a £200,000 property.
Yeah.
And it takes longer. It's more complicated. It's not that one's more valuable than the other to the client. It just is a different proposition.
Yeah.
So I think when I started, I was I'm quite risk averse, right, as a person. Genuinely, I genuinely am, and that's why this was a big deal for me to do it. So I was like, I can't turn anything away. I've got to take everything on. It doesn't matter where. I was driving all over the place. So and that, to be honest, that is what I did. And that was a mistake I made. And because I'd moved it, so I'm from Reading Way, but I worked in Windsor, and now I'm in Newbury. So I'm dotted around.
Sure.
Now, as I've sort of developed, I've gone, right, I'm going to go down the route of village, rural, equestrian property, and I've almost focused on a sector rather than an area. But what I should have done is focused on an area, done that again as sort of the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Because if you sell a big house, it's lovely, isn't it? You get
absolutely. I see the frustrations on it.
Spread out.
Yeah, I see the frustration on it myself if I have a larger property, not of those kind of values here in the Midlands, but even so, it's the same thing. They take longer. You're waiting long for that commission to come through. So, but the good thing is with self-employed agency, you can flip that pretty quickly, can't you? So you can.
I could. That's something I found hard. Like, that's very personal to me. For some reason, I don't know why. I find it hard to nail an area and get traction in a specific area. Yeah. I genuinely don't know why. Probably because I'm doing something wrong. It's my new focus for this year. I started again just before Christmas of trying to get core market area around the new villages, let's say. But that's what I think. If someone asked me how would you do it differently, that would be the one biggest thing that I would have done differently.
Sure.
Changed it.
And are you getting help with that from the market centre as well?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They hammer me on it all the time. It's
Yeah,
I have a very, I've known some of the market center people a long time. They give me a hard time on it, right? And they have my permission to do that. I do need a kick sometimes.
yeah,
I think one of the reasons I struggle is because, as I said, I am risk averse, right? And I think people who can get over that could just be absolutely phenomenal. My sister-in-law's just launched her own veterinary practice. Okay.
right,
Now the setup for that is monumental compared to what we set up.
sure.
And premises, equipment. And I said to her, "You're not worried about massive loans on it." I said, "Are you not worried about the finances?" She's like, "No, got no concerns whatsoever." And that must be an incredibly powerful mindset.
Yeah, it's I'm a bit like that. I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? As long as I've still got my roof over my head, that is the main thing that's going to
I
help me.
really deeply admire you for that. I genuinely, because I'm
So
like the opposite. I'm like, oh my God, this is catastrophe. I'm going to be homeless. I can't pay my mortgage. I'm going to lose my car. Everything's terrible. I'm really good at catastrophizing.
yeah, but that's good though. I like the mix of different people that we've got within the Keller Williams network or in the market
Yeah,
centre because we are all so different, but we can lean into each other and
yeah,
learn.
yeah, absolutely. And it was, and now I can laugh at myself, but I laugh at myself, and I will still do that if I'm bad, a bad few weeks. It's like
Yeah.
the world is terrible, everything's terrible. Whilst I think those people a bit more like you who can be like, you know what, I've actually, and into the long term, I'll ride this out. I think that's an incredibly. I'd love to be like that.
Yeah, but then,
I
then
really
there
would.
is the other way. I'd probably like to be a bit more risk averse on
Yeah,
certain things where I should
yeah,
probably
yeah, yeah.
take time a little bit more. So with the industry, then more and more self-employed agents are coming in. Do you see it taking off even more in the self-employed world?
I do see it taking off more.
Yeah,
I think we're battling's the wrong word, but there's the generally the UK real estate agency sector is a back would be a rude way of describing it, but it hasn't changed that much for a long time.
yeah,
And that links in slightly with things like conveyancing, which haven't changed a lot for a long time. And I know they're trying to make changes with the material info and stuff, but it's not. It's quite small now. I think if you go with a brokerage agent or self-employed agent or whatever, really and truly across the board, you're more likely to get a higher standard.
yeah,
That's a
agree.
general rule. Now that is quite a generalization. You need to be with the right person. You've got to have faith in them. You've got to have a relationship with them. But generally, that person wants to sell your house or let your house. There's very. I don't want to sound too commercial here or too mercenary, but at the end of the day, I love meeting people. I love forming relationships. But I've got a job to do if I take that house on.
Absolutely.
And that is I need to sell it, and I have a business to run. I have a mortgage to pay. I have people I pay. It's there's a job to do, and therefore you are much more invested in what you do.
Yeah,
You're not you got to do it. It's got to happen because the other way you have no choice on the grand across the board. Obviously
yeah,
things go wrong occasionally, but I think people like that investment in what they do, and I think there's always going to be, and I think probably slightly more at the higher end, actually, there is a tendency of people to lean towards bigger names
yeah,
like the Knight Franks, the Savills, the Fine and Countries, Fine and Country a bit different, isn't it? Brokerage, but the Struts, whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I think that will steadily change over time when you say to people, "This is how I do the marketing. This is what I invest," and you can look people in the eye and say, I really, well, not I need to sell it because I wouldn't give them faith, but you're in it till the end. You'll
yeah.
see this through.
And I
There's
think
very
self
little point in me taking something on and not selling it.
Yeah, I think you've got that. And it's reputation because we
Yeah,
really need those referrals as well. We need people to talk about us. We need
yeah,
those reviews. So
yeah.
yeah, I totally agree with everything that you're saying there. And
But
I see it.
you've got to do a good job, right? You've got to do a good job. That obviously we want to say to people who are coming in. There's don't half do it. You got to be good.
Yeah, we're seeing a big shift in the Midlands where the village locations actually are owned now by local independents or
Mm.
self-employed agents. So I think that's going to start spreading in other bigger, dense populated areas as well. So I think people are going to realise that you've got to put your trust in one person, not in 10 people, because 10
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
going to do
that.
the
And
job.
you've got a bit what I said earlier. It is stressful selling, right? Buying and
Yeah,
selling, it is stressful. And it's quite often what I say to people is that when you've had a survey done on your property, and basically the surveyor comes in and tells you your house is falling down, which they all do because that's kind of their job, to be fair.
Yeah,
Everyone freaks out. I
that's
would.
it. Yeah,
And they need to be able to pick up a phone and say, "Oh my god, I'm freaking out," and I need to be able to say, "Don't freak out. Let's
yeah,
just go through it. Let's all just be cool over this."
that's it.
Um, you've got to have the standards. You've got to be invested. There is if I again, I don't like. I have nothing against the rest of the industry at all. As I said, I have an opportunity, but if I do go, I've just helped my parents buy a place um, around the corner,
Yeah,
and I'm always a little surprised in how people are treated. There's just not an understanding that it is stressful and that these people are precious, and it is a big deal. It's not. It does surprise me, and you'll ring one person and they'll say, "Well, I don't know anything about that," and you'll be like, "Well, can you
yeah,
pass me to someone that is?" Or they'll be like, "Well, you need to get this in today, or it won't be dealt with until Monday." And it's like, well, what? It's a
yeah.
house
It's
sale.
great.
We're talking about £500,000 here.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Someone's biggest asset, and it's just
Yeah,
all it
yeah,
takes is
exactly.
more or
And
less.
that's like what I think people get frustrated with.
Yeah,
And that's quite consistent feedback I get being passed to different people. You always have someone that pitches, don't you? From the main high street, you have the head of office that pitches,
yeah,
and then you have a negotiator. First
yeah.
viewing, never seen the house. Now I've done that. I did that when I was younger, Chris. Don't get me wrong. We've all been there, right? I've been in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
industry a long
yeah.
time. We've all been there, and we've all done the thing where you meet the first buyer or the first tenant, and you go, "Oh, look, I've not been here, but we can look around together." And you're trying to form rapport, and then you think in hindsight, I think now, what a shocking service to
That's
provide to an
it.
actual landlord or vendor.
And it's so strange because, like, it's like we're the only industry that does it. Because you go into a car
Yeah,
showroom, if you're going to buy an Aston Martin, you're going to get the best person in that showroom
yeah,
who's going to be selling it to you. And
yeah.
if you're trying to broker £1 million deal, you're going to have the best person in that office
Yeah.
trying to broker that deal. It is bizarre, yeah, it still blows my.
That's what people don't like. They want, and I think that will improve this standard of service, right? And it doesn't matter what it is, right? And one of the things I said, you call it, if you want to be American, call it a mission statement. One of the things I always said to myself, with if I'm selling a £200 flat in town centre, or I'm selling a £2 million, 10-acre place,
Yeah,
rural place, to that vendor, each of those vendors, that is the same inherent value. All right,
absolutely.
okay, the plan is different. We'll have a different plan to the flat, to what we'll do with the estate,
Yeah,
but it's the same value. It needs the same care. It needs a different approach, different conversations, different marketing, whatever. But it's the same inherent value to each person. That was something like I've always said to them. I've never forgotten that. I think that's really, really important.
yeah, yeah. No, that's good. I think people need to realise that when they're coming into the industry. Just a quick one then. I wasn't going to throw this question in, but I am. Do you think people can come into a self-employed role, or if they haven't done the job before? Because this is something that people talk about a lot in the industry. I'd like to know your views on that.
Yes, is the honest answer is yes, they could.
Yeah,
Of course, they could. As I said, that it is not what I do on a day-to-day basis. People can do as long as you're broadly intelligent. You could do it. It's not
yeah,
rocket science. What I would say though, as my caveat to that is, you would come in, be very humble for a start,
yeah.
and learn. Right? It's not, as I said, it's not complicated, but it's not easy.
No,
You've got to know, you've got to be slick, you've got to be good. It's a big deal selling someone's house. You've got to
yeah,
be, almost not honored to be invited in, but you've got to take it seriously.
absolutely.
So yeah, you could do it, Chris. You could do it. Anyone could do it. What I do, it's not complicated, but you need to do it well. You need to be humble. You need to lean in. You need to learn and look around. And go, right. What can I do better? How can I do this better? What can I
Yeah,
improve? Because
I
there are
agree.
people that I've spoken to who have sort of said them like, "Oh, I met my agent and they did a terrible job. Therefore, I'm going to be an agent." I'm like, well, I kind of get your logic, but that's not a way to start.
No,
You've got to be humble.
yeah, I'm totally with you on that, and I do believe there are people who can come into this industry and be very good. I mean, we've seen some even in Keller Williams, but also the first couple of years I was at Keller Williams, we were bringing in some.
Yeah,
dross.
yeah,
So I think it's got to
absolutely.
be the right kind of person. But I do think that's changed now. Things have
So do
changed
I.
in the Keller Williams network. And
So do I.
even over the past year, I've seen a massive difference of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve. So no, that's great.
I mean, especially with, I mean, I've been with KW Oxygen now for what, a bit over 5 years, and in that time, it was always good. Otherwise, I wouldn't have joined it. But
Yeah.
it's changed a lot, and the KWUK has changed a lot, and it's much more refined now. It's much better. The training's really good.
Hmm.
The
Agreed.
support is good.
Yeah.
Systems are good. It's a really good. Look, there are a lot of brokerages around, right? You make your call on it.
Yeah.
I have no reason to look elsewhere. I've spoken to other brokerages, but one of the biggest things with Oxygen is the training, and that's where I think links back to what you said about people joining who haven't done it before. Yeah, there's more training you can do that's on
Yeah.
offer.
Absolutely.
So pick it up.
Oh, yeah, I would add with the people as well because I've seen you look at some of the other brokerages and I'm not here to slag them off. There's some brilliant agents and some brilliant brokerages, but it's the people you've got around you as well. I would say don't just be blinded by the lights and don't be just blinded by what figures are being pushed around socials because it can be a completely different story if you're not
Oh
careful.
yeah, I mean, when I first spoke to people about, I can't remember if it was KW or a different brokerage now, but I spoke to people that I knew who'd done what I'd done a bit before, left Savills, set on their own. He said, "Whatever figures anyone gives you, cut them in half
Yeah,
and go from there." And I didn't forget. To be honest, I took him quite seriously. I knew the guy; he had no reason to lie to me.
yeah,
Um, but he's someone else that he's built an incredible business.
that's it. That's it. But you reach for the stars, right? You do what you
Yeah,
want to do and you go for it and you smash it.
yeah.
So
And I think the
excellent.
nice thing about it is you can do it how you want to do it.
Yeah,
Some people want to build a big team.
yeah,
They want people around. They want to manage, and that's there's some great Lana States, Paul Leslie, Michael Bow. They've built some really good stuff. Others have no desire to do that.
yeah.
They want to be themselves. They
You
don't
want.
want to me a bit too. To be honest, I don't want a team around me. I don't particularly. I'm not especially experienced of dealing with office staff. I don't particularly want to be.
Yeah,
And there's sort of all middle ground around that.
sure.
Others who might want one person or two people or a million. It doesn't matter. You can do it very much your own way. You can focus on lettings. You can focus on sales. You can say I don't want to do that. You can focus on development.
That's it. That's it. Well, thank you anyway, Charlie, for
Pleasure,
joining today. I'm sure people can reach out to you if they want to reach out to you. Got any questions
definitely.
about Keller Williams or anything like that? So I'll make sure they're in the show notes. But yeah, thank you again, Charlie, and speak to you again soon.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah, speak soon.
Bye.